Gentlemen, it's 1:30 and you're live.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the workshop of the Board of County Commissioners. Would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first up we have our district attorney update. We have Mr. Matt Margeson and Miss Claris Feuilly. What do you folks?
I had worked on providing some statistics as it relates to crime rate, or at least cases that we're seeing here in Montezuma County. In comparison to the previous years, if you scratch that data out, we are actually noticing a statistically significant drop in most types of crime that we see most often. So our traffic and misdemeanor cases, our DUI cases, a slight drop in domestic violence cases. What we're seeing an increase in, however, is the number of felony cases that we have filed in the first quarter of this year. I expect that those will even out. It's somewhat variable how many of those we see in a given quarter, but I anticipate that by the end of the year that number will be stabilized. I do anticipate that we will see a slightly reduced number of cases filed overall in the district attorney's office, and that I think is a positive thing. I think some of the pressures that were placed on law enforcement during the course of the pandemic have eased significantly, and I think that is a substantial factor accounting for the overall decrease that we're seeing here for the first quarter. Wanted to talk to you gentlemen also briefly about where we're at in the district attorney's office as far as what cases we've dealt with recently. We have recently had 2 back-to-back felony trial convictions, one for a theft and robbery scenario, and the other for a individual who was trafficking narcotics within Montezuma County. That individual, after being found guilty, agreed to the maximum possible sentence in the aggravated range for his crimes, which was 16 years, in order to avoid potentially more serious consequences as it relates to habitual criminal charges. So we consider that to be an extremely good outcome for that case, and I wanted to just draw attention to that, thank my staff, and specifically Mr. Reed, who was the attorney working on that case for, 6 months or so now. Would also like to thank law enforcement, specifically the Drug Task Force within Montezuma County. Did an absolutely excellent job working that case for us and assisting us through the trial process, and specifically Detective Claris for his assistance there. And then I wanted to, as I normally do, ask you guys if you had any particular questions about what was going on, where we're at, what's happening at the DA's office.
I don't.
Commissioner?
Oh, I'm just looking at the charts. I was just trying.
I actually have, obviously you have Q1 for 2022, which is all we have the data for, on your felony drug cases at 16. If that stays current, we're gonna, 2021, that's your total aggregate, correct? Of 32, well, in Q2, we would hit that already. Do you think that is gonna slow down, or if you do think it's gonna slow down, why?
No, I think that those are a direct result of, so the fact that we have an increase in filing of CR cases, which are our felony cases, is probably a direct result of the cases that we're getting as it relates to felony, either drug possession or drug distribution charges that we're filing. And I think that is due primarily to the influx of fentanyl within this community.
So we could hit, if we stay on this path, we're gonna hit 64
I think
for
that
the year.
I think that that's unlikely. I think that that number will slow down. I think that when we have cases from the task force specifically, a lot of times those are filed at specific times so as to protect information as it relates to confidential informants. So they might not be filed right away. It might be 6 months down the line before that case is filed in order to protect certain assets that the drug task force uses. And so I think that we've had a number of those filings recently. I do anticipate that there will be fewer filings as we progress into summer. But is that number, is the drug felony number going to be higher than we saw last year? Almost assuredly. And it's almost assuredly going to be higher because of the increase in fentanyl that we've seen within this community. And we are taking those distribution cases extremely seriously. If somebody is accused of distributing fentanyl, we want that to result in a lengthy Department of Corrections sentence.
Okay. And then your DV cases are also, I mean, they're up quite a bit too. I mean, is that directly related to COVID? I mean, do you guys have any way to, is there any way to?
It's very difficult to assign a particular explanation to a specific factor. I think
certainly increased starting with COVID, but we don't know specifically if that's
Right.
why.
the two are correlated, but I can't necessarily say that they're directly connected. But the more folks that you have in situations where they're finding difficulty in their home life because of money troubles, employment, those kind of issues, you're going to see an increase in domestic violence cases. And I think certainly part of what the problem was with the pandemic was getting people into a situation where they could work and support themselves and support their family. And so I think to the extent now that we are seeing, help wanted signs out at various places around the county, that there appears to be a push to get folks employed and hired, that is going to assist with those numbers. But that's a gut feeling. I couldn't point to a specific statistic there and say that that's why.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see how it trends through the rest of the year now that we're kind of pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic conditions, post-pandemic.
Gotcha.
Normal.
Back to normal.
Kind of.
Because
Thank you,
if you look at
Commissioner.
2017, 140, and in 2021, we went to 198. That's a significant increase in DV.
Significant.
That's,
And it didn't just start there. I mean, if you look in 2020, you'll see that number spiked there. And I can think of a thing that happened in 2020 that might be related to this, but from a statistic standpoint, I hesitate to say what directly caused what. I think the other thing that is important to note is that there has been, during the pandemic itself, an influx of people wanting to come into the area. I think during this same course of time, you'd see a substantial increase in the valuation of property around the county, and I wonder if there's just not more folks here.
hard to say, the census didn't change.
Right.
250, 300 people. So
Who could say?
really hard to say, but it's interesting looking back prior to the pandemic of where we were in 2019 with our numbers, and then look at them in Q1 of 2022, and it's like, geez, the pandemic was bad enough by itself. Now we're gonna just multiply
Crime on top of it.
crime and dealing with what we had to deal with because of what's been created because of it.
Correct. But the positive news is that courts are open, there's not masking requirements there, we are actually able to get through and try cases, and that has helped substantially.
Good.
The more time we can spend in court, I think the better the outcome is for our community, just from a standpoint of these cases are actually getting dealt with. We're not gonna run into speedy trial deadlines, and we're not gonna have cases that fall by the wayside because of that. So that's the positive, I think.
All right. That's really, not really a question, more of a comment, looking at your graph. But it's good information to have. I just don't know how we cure it. Obviously, we can't cure it. It is gonna be life, and hopefully people can realize that they can be responsible and try and take care of themselves.
Yeah, and I think it's not so much a matter of finding a cure. I think it's a matter of finding community support for folks that are dealing with addiction issues, dealing with domestic violence problems within the household. These are broader issues to address within the community. There's not going to be just a law enforcement solution that works to solve those. We have our part to play. The sheriff's office, they have their part to play, and I think that the good work that the county commissioners can do is ensure that we have these continued opportunities for businesses to come into this community, to provide good quality jobs for our citizens. As long as we're doing those kind of things from a holistic view, that has been shown time and time again to significantly impact
Yeah.
crime rates.
Going to work is a good thing.
Yep. Hard to
It's-
get in trouble when
It
when
really
busy
is.
hands,
It's
you know?
it's a great thing. It's social. It keeps you occupied, not too much time together. I mean, that creates stress and trouble, so that's all I have.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. If there's no other questions, I'm gonna get heading to court.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right. Okay, next thing we have on our agenda are concerns for County Road G. Mr. Zwicker, do you want to have a seat right here at the microphone? Pull the microphone up so that everybody can hear you. Not necessarily in the room, but everybody that's watching on TV.
All four people.
Oh, it'll get viewed.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You bet.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. And Jim Reporter's here with me. He understands, and some of this concerns him. But we have two places down there, one between his water wheel and the Battle Rock School. And the other one's down at my place. But a few years ago, the county came down and took a bunch of the humps out of the road and straightened the road in places. And there at his place and at mine, when they took the humps out, they left narrow ditch banks. And there at his place, it's not as critical as mine, but it leaks all the time. County has to come down every few months and put more pavement in the potholes and try and keep the water off the road. Down at my place, it's much more critical. There's 235 feet of my ditch that is honeycombed with crawdads. There's about 4 places now that the entire bank is washed away. The only thing holding the ditch bank is willow roots. And, you know, the county's been down there at my place as well as his, and trying to patch the road where the water gets on the road. But if we don't do something this year, that ditch is gonna break and flood the road probably several times. And I have, like I say, there's 235 foot that's critical. I've called 3 different outfits about pipe. The biggest pipe they can come up with is 15-inch. Jarman said it could be as high as $27 a foot. When we get to it, that would be $60,345, not counting any elbows we'd have to put in that pipe alone. I do it, we'd have to go to about 3 different outfits to get enough pipe to do the project. And, I'm not able to do it. You know, I need help. And I think, the necessity to do it, you know, I saw what was done on the Wilson ditch there last year because the water was causing the banks to slide off and looked like it might even get the road if something wasn't done. But the project down there would probably be 1/10 of the price that was spent up on the Wilson. But it's getting real critical. I went up every other day all summer, spent about 2 hours a day stuffing crawdad holes with gunny sack and sheep wool, stuff they didn't want to dig through. A lot of the time, in 2 hours, they would have dug in beside it and it's leaking again. And the only way I see to remedy it is to put it in pipe. And, you know, the price of the pipe is one thing, but most of it we can lay right in the ditch. There's one place there where there's 2 rocks that either need to be blasted or some kind of heavy machinery to get them where we could get the pipes through it. But as far as putting the pipe in, I think me and my son could do that down there on our place, and we could help up at Jimmy's because our ditch comes through this property. But anyway, I'd like for you guys to, if you cared to, go look at it and you'll see, yeah, this is not gonna work.
I actually went with the road superintendent Wednesday. I actually went down McCombell Canyon with him to look at the road, because we had this conversation on Monday, so I had scheduled time to go down there with him, and we went down, or maybe it was Tuesday, I can't remember, but we actually did go look at it. And I saw where the old wheel, it's not utilized anymore, but basically that's kind of what you're talking about,
No,
going
that's one that he's
to the
talking
west.
about, but it's not critical. The one that he's got down there's gotta be done.
which is to the west. So we have more of a water expert here with us now. I'm not by any means.
I know it runs downhill.
And I have no problem saying that, so I'm gonna kind of let Commissioner Koppenhafer, not to put you on the spot, Commissioner, but you're more of the water guy that we deal with here. I will back up just a little bit to tell you the reason that we worked with the ditch company on at mile marker 21 was because that water was seeping down below when we drilled wells to find out where is the water coming from, and then it was moving out onto the north side of the ditch into the creek. And without stabilizing that on that U property, we were in jeopardy of losing that road around that erosion of that bank from the creek. So here again, we don't control water at all. The county doesn't control water. We just look at what we do to keep the roads passable. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Commissioner.
When his ditch runs over the county, the creek's right there, so it could cut the county road off in the creek. You'll see where the water's coming from there,
So where's that at?
where they're coming on that line turn, and the whole ditch breaks and runs over the county road. The creek's right up against the road. That's the problem, nobody's got room to move.
Correct. So,
Where he's talking about is the ditch comes around and it's up about 6 foot higher than the road. And the road's there, and then the McCombell Creek's right there. I mean, it's right, they're all 3 just like that, and stacked. So there's no place.
So, something that it was brought up last week, and I'm not sure who brought it up, but didn't the NRC, or the question is, did the NRCS office cooperatively design something with you guys down there to get that put into pipe? Or where's that at? Because,
I talked to Joel before I scheduled a meeting with you folks last week. This is the 5th year I've been signed up to get the ditch and pipe. And he was apologetic and said, you know, we're working on it. But, you know, I'm not trying to kick anybody under the bus, but I've been signed up for 5 years. A friend of mine signed up for 2 months and had his pipe and his sprinklers. So I feel there's something political there, but he was very cooperative. He told me there wouldn't be any funding this year, but hopefully after the 1st, they'd relook at my application and probably fund it. But that's a year away, and we won't get through this summer without some serious ditch breaks.
okay,
Did they actually go down there and engineer it, or what did they do?
They haven't engineered anything yet.
They haven't done anything?
No,
Not even in the past, any time?
no. And a year ago, this spring, I met with them and they said, your project is funded. So late summer, early fall, I heard the pipe was going up, so I called in and said, you know, I'm interested in getting this thing started. And they said, oh, you're not funded. And I said, well, you told me this spring I was. And they said, well, you're not. So I don't know where that went.
so obviously I'm gonna ask a kind of a ignorant question, but that ditch doesn't look like it's been cleaned for a long time. I mean, there's all kind of growth coming out of that ditch where you're talking about. So, I mean, the cleaner the ditch, the quicker the water moves and flows through it so that there are no obstructions, which then keeps crawdads and so on and so forth out of there. I mean, is there a possibility of getting that ditch cleaned up? Because
We clean that ditch every year, and we clean it good. It's just that where it's bad, it falls in and muds in, and in fact, we clean it in the spring, and usually a little after midsummer, what we call turn it back. We go in and take the grass that's in and mud it in, and we lay it back on the banks. We try and keep our ditches in good shape. If we don't, by the end of summer, we don't get enough water to irrigate.
So I guess, what is your ask? I mean, or what is the point that you were asking the county to do, I guess? What?
I'd like for them to buy the pipe for me, and that one place where there's rock, it either needs to be blasted or some heavy equipment. The rest of it we can do by hand.
And you said you had 235 feet, and that's 15 inch?
Yes. And that's the biggest they had. NRCS said to carry my water it'd take 18 inch, but we take about half my water south across the creek to irrigate those fields across the creek, so I think 15 inch would be adequate to carry what we have on that side.
So are you guys in a ditch company also, like what was up above?
We're what they call tenants in common. There's no ditch company, but if you have a ditch company, you've got an entity that is liable or suable. If you're tenants in common, you don't have that.
How many on the ditch, Sheldon?
Gosh, Jimmy is no better than I do.
And what,
How many people on the ditch?
15, 20?
15, 20?
He's on the tail end.
Okay.
And the NRC office, the NRCS office hasn't cooperatively worked with you guys to get this in pipe?
No.
I mean, it doesn't.
And they've had me sign up, get everybody down on RN's signature and approval. They've had me do it twice. Like I say, this is the 5th year that I've been signed up to get help, and it hasn't happened yet.
Go back, have Shad go back up. back up the country a ways.
And you said that was $27 a foot right now? Just
Well, no,
PVC?
That's Jarman's price, or not Jarman's, Cruzan's price.
President's price.
IFA was 18 to 22 a foot.
But they had less than 100 feet. They said it'd be 4 months before they could get more pipe.
So the issue, like everything else, is
Yeah.
it doesn't even exist.
Well, I kept calling around. I think between 3 different outfits, we can get enough pipe to do it, and some of it will have to be black poly. But I think there's close to 200 feet of the 15-inch PVC. And that's what I'd rather use, but I'll use whatever works.
What are those guys over there in Mancus using? Is it big enough?
Oh, that's bigger.
Is it?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's probably 24 inch, isn't it?
it's 27, I think. It's 27 inch, but they've used every bit of that pipe.
Sure.
I don't think there's any of it left.
Okay.
I think they used every bit of it. Looks like, because they pretty much have finished all the pipe now and they're just working on the turnouts. But I don't see any pipe left sitting there at all. They either hauled it off or they used every bit of it. It looked like they were right down to the very end. They have enough pipe to finish it. I think the best thing for us to do if we're gonna do something is go talk to NRCS and see what they've already done
Yeah, I agree.
before we do anything.
We can't twist
See
it
if
a
we
little
can
bit.
stimulate them
Yeah.
to do something for them.
Is that all right with you? We talked to NRCS and try and,
Yeah, we're gonna need water in the ditch right away.
okay.
And also, I might add, the problem there at Jimmy's isn't near as long as mine, but the figure I gave you on pipe is my place alone. And I could, see what we need there at Jimmy's, but to cure that, needs to be put in pipe too. And it's probably not, 40, 50 feet there at your place?
I don't know, that whole bank kind of leaks, but it's got a place to go where you're going, nowhere to go but over the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know right where you're talking about.
But I don't
Okay.
know if NRC does projects like that anymore, or whether they just gotta do a whole pipeline to save water.
I don't know, but, I mean, we can have that conversation with them and see if we can't do something for you in that regards, because basically you're asking us is, if that $27 a foot is accurate, I mean, plus or minus a little bit, that's a $6,345 ask.
I think that's the very top end. Like I say, the IFA was between 18 and 22.
Right.
They gave me the price of
Right,
$27.
and it's better to project on the top end than the lower end, because with the way everything is moving right now, that could be the lower end. I mean, it realistically could, in a week, they'll say, well, that is the
Right.
lower end, so I'd rather project a little high there and hopefully, but I think I agree with these other two commissioners that we need to go talk to them and see what we can do there, because right there, you are on all rock. I mean, obviously went down there and looked at it, very slowly moved across that area, just
Well,
so I
looked
could.
at it a couple times, seeing if there's any way where we could set the ditch back and thicken up that bank. It just, the ditch is against the rock,
Yeah,
and
Yeah, it's pretty tight.
maybe we could convince the historic boys to build us a field down there.
yeah.
Okay, we will do that for you, Mr. Zwicker. We will get a hold of the NRCS office and see if there's something that we can do to help.
I really appreciate it.
You bet.
I really do.
Okay,
And thank you fellas for your time.
you bet.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys. Do you have anything else, Mr. Porter, or,
Nope, I'm
okay,
good.
all right,
My grandson get hold of you?
he did.
Good. He better have.
Yes, he did.
Thank you.
See ya.
See you.
So Commissioner, you had an invitation from Montrose County to jump on one of the discussions about collective bargaining. Did you want to time out the commissioner meeting,
Yeah,
participate in that?
I'd like to time out. We'll go into the planning room. Let's jump on this Zoom meeting. We can talk the other 3-4 items that we have on our. Okay,
Okay.
so we're gonna time out.
Okay, we are back.
Back live?
Commissioners.
Okay. Next, we have the racetrack contract, Mr. Ian MacLaren, our attorney.
Yeah, so,
And I just want to say real quick that I did send the commissioners with their packets, both a cleaned up version and a red line version.
Mm-hmm.
so I've been working with Justin down at the fairgrounds. He's been working with an individual, Mr. Garcia, who's interested in promoting the track for this upcoming race year. Justin met with him, discussed some things. In essence, the track lease that's in front of you guys is the same as that original lease that was sent out with a couple significant changes. The first being, initially, we had talked about a year-long term. Mr. Garcia is interested in leasing the property for a 5-month term. In essence, the term would start on April 20th and it would extend to September 20th. My advice to Justin and to you guys would be, he can't go in there till the lease term starts. There's some improvements or changes he wants to make, I think to that wall specifically, getting that fixed. But, until he signs that thing, we shouldn't have him going in. So in essence, if we did agree to this term, he would be able to go in on April 20th and start doing whatever he needed to do. He would have it for 5 months. What Justin did was he prorated the lease, so it would be an amount of $6,250 for the course of 5 months, as opposed to the $15,000 that we had talked about.
Which would have been for the whole year.
For the whole year, exactly.
Correct.
Other than that, the only other changes to this contract, this section 14, really what that says is that it just guarantees that we're not going to do anything on off days to interfere with his business practices. He was just concerned that, for instance, if we went down there and had the demolition derby, that if the third party that was using the track for that day were to tear it up, he just wants it restored in a way that he can use it for his races. And so just trying to clarify that with the language here in section 14.
Right, and that's because every racetrack, well, I've only done this for 3 years, so you guys have way more experience than I do, but it seemed like every time the demolition derby happened, they say that it tore up the racetrack.
Yep.
So how do we,
Well,
I guess my question is that, I know it's a big fundraiser for the fair.
Yeah.
well, I think the demolition derby's already booked the track, is my understanding from Justin, for that period of time. Now, I think that the key here is in the lease language, we talk about not interfering with his business practices. I'm obviously not a track maintainer. I don't know exactly what it takes to get that turn banked the way it was pre-derby. When I've been down at the derby in the past, a lot of the derby actually occurs more on the infield than on the bank turn. But I think that was a concern for Mr. Garcia in promoting this. He didn't want folks going in on these off days with the county's permission and tearing it up somewhere.
Sure, no, and that makes sense. That makes perfect sense, and I would agree with that, because
And I think that really ultimately, if we were to agree to this, Justin's got to convey to whoever uses the track that, hey, you got to get it back in a usable condition so it can be returned to the tenant.
right,
And so,
which is fair. I mean, that's only fair
Without question.
to that tenant, so, all right, go ahead.
One thing the Fair Board has done in the past that made sense and made that work out a little better is when they have whoever's promoting the track promote the demolition derby.
and that's how it's been done in the past. That's not how it's going to be done this year.
Who is doing it then? Somebody else is doing it?
Yeah, a third party's doing it. Justin didn't have the name off the top of his head, but it's last year Gene did it, and then the year before it was another individual who did it sort of as part of the fair. That guy who did it 2 years ago, my understanding, he's gonna be back for the demo derby this year, and so he'll do it. So, I don't know the details, but it's not gonna be Mr. Garcia, the individual that wants to lease the track.
So it's another.
It's some kind,
third
yeah, it's
party.
some
Okay.
third party.
Well, that would be fair to Mr. Garcia to definitely make sure that the track was returned to its,
And that's gonna
Condition.
go for all things that happen down there. I think the demo derby's the big one, but, I mean, it really will extend to any event that happens down there on an off day that the county wants to use that facility. I mean, if we go in there and use it, then it's gotta come back to the way it was.
this is really the only event that's ever been used for that the county, I mean, we don't,
Has anything to do with.
that has anything to do with. Otherwise, Mr. Garcia would be held whole and not disrupt his business.
Yep.
I don't think that we, if we agree to sign this like it is, I don't think we should allow any others down there to mess with his business because he is signing a lease. It seems fair to,
Yeah, if anyone's gonna admit him, let him do it.
Well, and that's really up to you guys, the way this lease is written.
Right.
You guys have that opportunity to utilize that, doesn't mean you have to,
right.
but
we don't-
that's
right.
open to you.
It's just a
So-
discussion that we
Yep.
can have this.
Exactly.
I just don't think we should do that. He's willing to step up and make something for that racetrack, then we should kind of protect him.
Yep.
So next change?
The other change, section 17 or paragraph 17, Mr. Garcia was just concerned, he's gonna put some temporary, things in there. He wants to put an announcer system in there. He wants to put track preparation equipment. He wants to put scoring transponders, computers, software. And then the last thing would be flags, portable safety, mobile enclosed units. He talked about maybe taking some kind of a temporary shed or certain temporary structures down and using those during the race season. He just wanted a specific language guaranteeing that he could take those out. And so that's been included in the contract. Obviously, anything permanent that he does, permanent in character, that has to stay.
Right.
So, if there's improvements made to that wall, that's gotta stay. But these specific things will be spelled out so Mr. Garcia can take it. And I think that's fairly standard anyway. I'm not sure that really even is a departure from the original contract as much as it is just language clarifying. He just wanted to be sure that these specific things that he wanted to take in, he could take out.
Well, that makes pretty good sense to me. There's nothing there that we would want. Yeah, that's part of him doing his business, and if it's
Yeah.
removable at that point, then I think it would be
Yeah.
fair enough to let him remove it. But if that makes sense, the way you have that language, then
So
I don't
that's.
see an issue with it.
That's really the changes that were made to that original contract that we discussed and put out. Again, the biggest difference is really the term and the cost. And so,
We were always open to that.
so,
Yeah, we basically designed the contract for a year based on,
The fact that stuff was there all year.
well, the fact that, stuff was there all year and he wanted a year contract. I think we're open to, if 5 months suits his term of what he wants to do, I definitely, I know we have to vote on this tomorrow, but
So I
I don't-
have it on the agenda
I don't
for
have any issues
tomorrow.
with that. If
And-
5 months
I don't
works,
either.
5 months works. He still
And-
knows that he has to have his own water and power for that period of time, and
Yep.
I think that's great. We can,
And then what we would do, commissioners, assuming you approve this tomorrow, is that we would ask him to sign the contract before coming in to do a presentation about how he wants to run things down there.
I'm totally okay with it. I mean,
Okay.
I don't, the contract was there and it's always been open, for a conversation. And if that's a conversation, 5 months suits his, business plan, then I think we're definitely okay with it. It's just a matter of, then he can't use it as a storage yard, which is
Yeah.
what was happening previously.
absolutely. And so.
And that's where the year contract comes into play. So obviously, we can't vote on this today, but if those are the only 3 items that we have to discuss, the term, which kind of looking around, I think we're okay with the term to move it. The fee will be changed to the lesser monthly rate, or I'm sorry, not lesser monthly rate, but
Lesser rate to
Lesser
reflect the
rate.
shorter term.
yep. And sounds like we're good to go.
Okay.
Do you got, is there, Okay.
Yeah.
all right?
I don't think there's anything more.
Okay, Gosh, that's easy. Get it to them, get it cleaned up and get it signed, and let's get them to.
Well, and
race
so what we had talked about with Justin was if the commissioners are interested in this, you guys could conceivably sign tomorrow during the meeting. Then Justin would get that to Mr. Garcia. He could sign it on Wednesday, and then he would come in a week from today. He wanted to present kind of with his vision of
Sure,
the
that's fine.
Speedway and what he wants to do. And so I think that was the timeline that we had discussed, and so.
So he could do it next Monday.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
And I think he would probably even sign it before then, just because he wants to get in there and get started,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're okay. I think we're covered as far as the county.
Oh, I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very good. Okay, you're up, still, Mr. MacLaren and Mr. Koppenhafer, Commissioner. What's your update on the NCA? We did see that.
Yeah, you can, I don't.
Either way.
That's fine.
So,
Go ahead.
so Commissioner Koppenhafer and I met with the NCA steering committee team, I guess you would call it, to just discuss some of the language that's in the NCA. We had gotten some updated language by email from one of the individuals, and we were a little bit unclear as to whether that was going to be included in the NCA or whether that was something that was just a proposal or whatever. After speaking with the group, they did in fact make certain changes to the NCA draft legislation, and we ran through some of those. I don't think that the majority of them were a big deal. There were some significant changes that they had suggested to Section 402, and really what that encompassed was removing the large-scale and small-scale definitions from the NCA, and then replacing that with some different language. When we saw the language that was proposed to be a replacement, it really it felt to both of us like it really significantly expanded the breadth of the NCA and the sort of projects that would be covered by the NCA. And so after speaking with the individuals there, I think everybody agreed that the goal of the NCA legislation is not to try to influence those small-scale water projects, those ditches and certain modifications to existing water structures, especially on the Upper Dolores. And so after speaking with them, I think that we came to some kind of understanding about what the new language might look like. And really, it would just be a modification that would talk about any and all existing infrastructure not being affected and adding language protecting the upstream water rights. Commissioner Koppenhafer suggested it. I think that everybody there came to some sort of a consensus, and so they were gonna get with some attorneys and then work on getting that actually on paper and getting that language to us. Just spoke with Commissioner Koppenhafer, and it sounds like neither one of us has gotten that updated language yet, but I anticipate that'll be happening soon. Once we get that, then we will, I think, have a final or pretty close to final version of the NCA legislation that we can then put forward and conceivably support with a formal letter. Other than that, we are slated to meet this Friday. We're gonna go and do a field tour of portions of the Lower Dolores and kind of check out some different things down that way with some of the partners. And so that was kind of where that meeting went.
Good, so we wanna hold off on the draft letter to send it to Laura San Mateo.
Yeah, I think,
Bennett.
yeah, I think at this point, my recommendation would be to hold off on issuing a letter. I mean, I think that, you know, my understanding and my feel was that we had kind of reached a consensus at the end of that meeting, and then it was just a matter of getting some of those fine points in the thing. That language should be forthcoming any time, and then I think at that point, hopefully we'll have a final version that we can look at and see.
Okay, good deal. And you guys are comfortable with
Yeah,
that
because
conversation?
basically what, the way that when they took that large
Mhm.
and small out of there, what it did is everything outside of the area up the Dolores, whole total up the Dolores River, included every project.
Mhm.
I don't care whether it's a repairing a ditch heading or whatever. And basically what they agreed to is, but inside the NCA, they have language in there that exempted ditches and pipelines and existing structures and this and that. You could go in and fix them in there without going through this. But above wasn't in there when they took that large scale thing out of there. So they're basically gonna put that same language above as what's
As they did
below.
below. Okay.
Am I summarizing that
Yeah,
correctly?
yeah, that's
You know,
exactly
basically
right.
That's what
And
we
they
got
were
them to
okay with
do,
protecting.
and they were okay with that.
Yeah.
They didn't think about that being
Gotcha.
what's going on, but when we brought that up, they were all agreeable to do
Okay.
it. They thought it was fine that we would switching it, so it's not any problem.
Yeah, I think really the spirit and the bottom line of this thing is they don't want to influence the ability of small-scale water users or to modify their existing structures in ways they need to be
Yeah.
modified. This is more about running the big projects through the Section 7 analysis and being sure those projects do not unreasonably diminish.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, very good. I guess we'll wait to see what your meeting on Friday brings, and if you guys,
And as soon as we get a copy of that new language, we'll certainly distribute it out. If I get it, I'll distribute it out to everybody, and Commissioner, I assume you'd do the same, so,
Yeah.
okay.
very good. All right. Anything else?
I think that's the only thing that was really, that we got out of there that was really
Yeah, I think
Significant
the only other significant discussion was just about surrounding the seats at the table and whether the Dolores Water Conservation District would have a seat at the table included in the legislation. I think there was agreement that they would.
Which, right,
Yeah.
DWCD?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I believe that they have to. Okay, very good. All right, with that, we'll go to the CTF discussion. Shaq and I had, along with Phaedra, last Wednesday, Thursday, we had a conversation with our DOLA representative, Leslie. And we actually had several questions that were asked and answered. So specifically, I don't have those papers in front of me, but I'm gonna start off in memory. First of all, right now, we currently pay 50% of the salaries
Wages and benefits.
out there for wages and benefits. Because it falls under the eligible projects for maintenance, which basically that's 75% of what Justin does and
That's
100% of
right.
what the other two employees do, that we can use that for maintenance personnel, and it does cover that. So we can use 2 full-time employees out there, or 1 full-time employee, and 75% of Justin's salary. So again, trying to stop the bleeding everywhere, that helps. I don't know if Phaedra has those numbers ran of what it is going to help us with, but it's a big chunk. There was also a tractor that we have leased out there currently that we are paying through the general fund. If you go down a little bit further, Shaq, it does say that leases for equipment is eligible. So that's a pretty big item. And also a vehicle, so it could be the tractor, it could be a pickup, it could be,
Well,
whatever.
We had specifically asked Ms. Jones about the tractor, and she said she'd look at it and get back to us. She emailed us back and said the tractor lease would be eligible.
Right. The most recent request that we had was for that 28 by 25 foot concrete wash bay with the grant that Andrea has. We could actually match that grant, and we could have enough funding to put that in and put it in immediately, because CTF would cover that. Or cover what the grant doesn't cover. It's only a $5,000 grant what they have, but it'll definitely be more than $5,000. It'll probably be double that. So that'll be covered. See, Shaq, what am I missing for the big items?
Could we use that compliance with ADA to pay for what we did, the maintenance upgrade on the lift?
Yes.
We can't, oh, yes, yes. So that, plus the other thing that we could use, believe it or not, and we asked this question specifically, if we could asphalt a 90,000 square foot area, basically 2 acres, and we could paint striping on it,
As long as it's within the footprint of the fairgrounds.
as long as it's within the footprint. And we could use that for our own testing facility along with the Unlimited Learning Center. Now, whether or not we decide we want to do something like that would be up to us. But it is definitely, as long as it is within that facility's footprint, we can do it. So that's going to help stop the bleeding out there significantly, just by moving the payroll, because that's probably the biggest expenses we have out there right now are payroll. So we're able to get 100% of the 2 and 75% of Justin, the department head. So pretty good news. It's the first time I've ever had the opportunity to really sit down and talk to DOLA, because I think there's a lot of confusion of what we could and what we couldn't do. And there's definitely enough money left in that account that we can take care of it.
The portion I have right now highlighted, gentlemen, would also reimburse time that James spends engineering that path to Mesa. And any planning and engineering around that, so it could also be used to help offset some of the costs with that.
So, Shaq, I don't know if this is, let me look at our agenda for tomorrow, but I think you could definitely get a hold of Andrea.
Yeah.
And let her know about that,
I was
but
planning to speak to Greg today, but
what-
it wasn't a-
What Phaedra had put together, just so you guys know, and maybe I brought it to your attention, but in 2019, 2020, and 2021, what you have in front of me right now, the difference in 2019, we bled $150,164, which, you know, here again is not what we've got to be able to fix it. Last year, or I'm sorry, in 2020, we were 69,527. Shaq, can you scroll down and get 2021? Which is 85,407. So I'll ask Phaedra now to take out the salaries to see where that's at, and that should diminish that number significantly. So we're not going to be that far off of being able to patch this to stop the bleeding, and we're probably going to be okay with some creativity from Justin to figure out how to, you know, all we got to do is break even. We don't have to make any money out there at all. We just have to break even. And with us having this CTF meeting with DOLA, I think we got some really good information that we can carry forward now. So I think it was actually a pretty exciting meeting. It was good information that we can stop the bleeding, because we can use that funding for those in the past. So
I just want to remind the commissioners that money comes in regardless, so it won't show an overall decrease in revenue versus expenditures.
correct, but
Because that money's already coming in and those expenditures are already being spent. What it will do is leave some reserves in the general fund.
okay, any questions?
No.
We should use it.
We have those funds available. We've got to use them. Like we said in our meeting this morning, we've got to figure out how to use all the other funds that we have to plug all the holes. So, all right, now we have planning. We have an amendment for fees, for septic fees.
Good afternoon. It's not
Good.
morning.
Afternoon, yeah.
It's always morning somewhere and it's always Monday morning here.
So that means there's no meeting tomorrow?
Yeah, Monday morning meeting tomorrow.
No, we have those on Tuesday. So anyway, this is continuing our discussion from back, the end of February on septic permits. And that you, wanted me to look up for the 5-county area, kind of what they charged, also road impact fees. So I did, get a hold of that information. We can cover the road impact fees real clearly. Nobody has them.
No,
La Plata
nobody.
County does oil and gas only, and San Miguel on a larger development, they do a bond on the road. So if there is damage, then they can get it fixed. Delta just adopted their land use code last year for the first time ever, so they're in limbo. La Plata's looking at road impact fees, Delta's looking at road impact fees. So we really didn't pursue any discussions on a church or any other building because most of them have discussed it. Nobody's sure how to implement it or how they would approach it, so.
So La Plata's the only one besides us that has a road impact fee?
Theirs is on oil and gas development only.
Is that, well, it's not my problem if it's legal or not to target a specific industry. Just go
Well,
on with your thing.
Yeah, that seems a little, yeah, because you're only charging one industry, and I'm not sure that, well, anyway.
It's not our problem.
It's not a discussion for us, never mind.
I don't know
Moving
what
on.
you're talking about.
Yeah, moving on, don't.
Septic systems, Montrose is at $175, Delta is at $600, Dolores County at $400, San Miguel $275, and La Plata's at $1,000.
And what are we at?
$400.
So what's the average? So how did they arrive at those numbers? Because there's a lot of difference between those numbers.
That is way beyond my time. I have no idea where they got their
So real
numbers.
quickly.
And then Montrose includes one inspection, additional field inspections, an extra $50. La Plata was an extra $30 for an inspection. I didn't make note of the others, if they had an extra inspection fee or how they handled it.
So with ours, we're right in the middle. We're just like Dolores County, which you brought up, $400, right,
Correct.
Dolores? So if you take the average of the five, which La Plata County is kind of almost one that you should throw out, but putting it in there, that's $490 for the average.
Pretty close.
2450, 490.
Mhm.
So as we had our discussion this morning, I mean, you said 90% of all of the permits are done as far as just the permit, and then obviously the engineer then is on the hook to sign and inspect, and then send that to the health department to get the actual permit
Correct.
completed. So how many of these counties also have that additional item added that they have to have engineered septic systems to Regulation 43? Because that's significant. If they're doing a lot of inspections like La Plata County, maybe they're doing it all on their own, where we don't, because I
Right.
actually think, Commissioner, it was in the mid-2000s when you guys went to that under Regulation 43, and you added that component that all of the septic systems in Montezuma County would be engineered,
Yes,
which
we
puts
did that.
all the liability back to the engineer. So really, is we're doing nothing more than just data collection at that point, right?
Right, the application, and then just make sure they've got the engineer's design and report and final certification.
I don't, and especially what you said, 90%, I don't see any reason at all that we should mess with that fee.
Yeah. Now with Melissa operating things, that might be higher and probably will be higher. but, you know, I don't know. In 2019, we didn't have our software, so I never did see any documents, so I don't know, but, you know, she left, and since then, a high percentage is from the engineers.
Which it would be, because everything has to be an engineered septic system.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't find a way to do a search from our permitting system, there's no way to, unless you went through them individually and tallied it all up to get a real percentage, but most of them, engineer signs off.
Sure. So let me read those off again. Montrose was at 175, Delta at 600, Dolores 400, La Plata at 1,000, and who is at 275?
San Miguel's at 270.
Oh, San Miguel.
That surprises me.
That surprised me too.
Okay. Well,
Is San Miguel, are they all engineered in that county? Do you know?
From what I understood, and I don't know if I mean, it wasn't really stated as such, because obviously this stuff isn't just like in a
Yeah.
one paragraph deal and you get all the information you need, but I was surprised too that their permit wasn't higher. But their engineering probably costs a lot more.
I bet it does.
they're in, well, on the west end it wouldn't be anymore, but on
Yeah.
in the mountains it's gonna be more,
Mm-hmm.
for sure, so. Okay, well, questions for Don?
I don't. I'll think of them when I leave.
So anyway, as far as planning adding any additional fees, I mean, I don't know that is a route we want to even pretend to go.
I don't think we should. I mean, the only question that I have, you know, just like I asked earlier, along with Commissioner Lindsay, is how many of them under Regulation 43 have adopted the engineered septic system? Because when we did that in the early 2000s, it then shifts all of the liability to the engineers, which then the county is doing nothing but just basically the data collection, which I think the $400 is probably more than covering the data collection that we currently have. I mean, how long does it take to issue a permit and to close it and to do one on-site inspection?
What about repairs?
Repairs have to be permitted as well, and it's usually only a $200 fee,
Yeah.
I think. It
It's
depends on the extent of the repair.
It's a lesser fee, but it's just a repair. So say one failed,
Yeah, we haven't, are we following up, or do we go out?
Those also get inspected.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, it doesn't have to have a new design,
Yeah,
but I think a lot of times they do get with an engineer, I guess, to see if if they're gonna be replacing like the field, then you might as well see if there's a better, longer operating system to put in, if you're tearing it all out anyway. But I don't really know, that's all the health department, they handle all that. But a standard repair is 200, then I think they have additional levels. If it's a whole tank and a whole leach field, it may be a full $400 plus a design.
well, if it requires that, then it actually is a whole new
that's a whole new
system, so then that's a
Right.
whole new permit. It's typically, a repair is just something beyond the tank to the field, because the tanks are typically okay, but sometimes the tank is the one that needs replaced and the field is working, so. if
They're
you
starting
go-
to find a lot of tanks that the sewer gases have eaten them up.
Oh, and they will after probably 50 years, kind of like a manhole. I mean, there is a length of life,
Yeah, that gas
even in
eats
a,
up that
even in
concrete.
a concrete tank, which
Cause
is
I know
probably,
some of the realtors have them pumped and inspected on a transfer of title, and just in the last month, they found 2 that needed to be replaced because the tops are almost
And they're-
completely eaten through.
they're probably 50 years or better too,
Some
aren't
of
they?
these are only like 20 years, so.
Oh, wow.
But I think it depends too, if they're used all the time, then it's not so bad. If they're only used as a summer,
Oh,
second
to where they're-
residence,
Where they're allowing the gases to actually be created instead of
Then
the
I think-
water constantly flowing.
I think that's the ones that are
Gotcha.
seeing more damage at a quicker rate.
Okay. All right, anything else?
Only if you wanna get back to, the salary discussion. That was the whole premise of the whole
Well, there's,
road impact fees and septic charges.
well, the road impact fees per
That's,
Ian in the statute, there's nothing that we can use other than if it's designated as road, it's gotta go to the roads, which
that
is
would,
what you sent to us, right?
right.
Yep, that's right, for the road impact fees, the permitting fees we talked about. If we did wanna raise those, we could use that to offset a salary increase or administrative costs, but the road impact fees do have to go to the roads.
So then I guess I'll send it back to you, what?
Is that, in a state statute, or if we revise the land use code, is that an option? Just from our discussion this morning?
You answer that.
Yeah, I think that the road impact fees have to go to the road, is my understanding. I can do a little bit more research, but I think road impact fees have to go to the roads.
So you're referencing like a driveway permit, or is that what you're referencing, that?
Well, it actually would, when we first had the discussion was on road impact fees, just because of the amount of time involved.
What we had talked about is because planning and zoning is putting so much time into the road impact fees and assessing those and doing the mapping for a lot of that stuff, that there is a big time cost to that.
So
And so-
what is the time associated with that, Don?
It's, I don't know, it's 35 to 40% of our time.
So can you look at the last like 2 years? Well, I don't know if 2020 is a
We
good
don't
year or
have
not,
time
but-
allocated to it. Last year, road impact fees were over 300,000, it averages around 250.
Correct, so, but that's the road impact fee itself, I'm talking about the time spent.
It all depends, some of them,
Some are easy, some
Some-
are more
right,
complex.
it's like everything we do,
Yeah.
there's no standard common,
I think, Don, the only way you could do what you're asking to do is if we put that road impact fee, you gotta put an administrative fee on that. You would
correct.
have to add, but I think legally, you would have to put an administrative fee on that road impact fee above the road impact fee
That makes sense.
if you were trying to take something off in planning. Otherwise, I think you're really getting into some,
And
I don't know, we had
yeah.
a discussion about this whole thing before.
Sure.
When we first started doing those road impact fees, about this sort of thing, what it would cost to do all this stuff and stuff.
And my recommendation would be, if you're gonna do that kind of an administrative fee on top of the road impact fees, I would distinguish that in the land use code and make it real clear that that's an administrative fee. That's an additional fee to the road impact fees. It's not, I would separate it from the road impact fees.
Right,
Because if you
because
start to get,
The minute you
start to
say
get it
road,
blended,
it goes
then all of a sudden-
specifically
exactly.
to we spend it on the road itself.
and so that, I mean, you conceivably could put an administrative fee into the land use code.
So what do you currently take right now for administrative fees for your,
Nothing.
Just on rezoning application,
we-
subdivision application,
Yeah,
high
yeah,
impact
just-
permit.
what you take in are just the road impact fees.
I think switch those mics out. I think your batteries might be dying. Or could it be Satan?
We'll find
Say
out.
that on YouTube?
There's other things you can't say,
Okay.
especially on YouTube.
So yeah, we collect the road impact fees and then they're deposited to Road and Bridge.
Right. And then they can use them within that 5-mile radius of wherever a project is being put into place, and that's why we have fees associated with development anywhere and everywhere. But we have no administrative fees for the time that you're spending for whatever it is, a high-impact permit or
Right.
or a subdivision or anything.
And so this all goes back to all the secondary houses that have been put in and nobody says anything, which then we have to try and collect on them, get them addressed so that the assessors can be aware of them, so they can assess them, because there's dozens of properties out there that aren't being taxed. So it's a whole combination deal, but it's very time consuming because you have to go see when there was a house there or not a house there or what turned into a house, and everybody's converting barns and shops to housing, and RV pads are full service.
And Don, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the reasons I understood that you brought up the possibility of the septic permits and possibly tacking a fee onto that was because that's really the way that you guys get the heads up on a lot of these properties. Is that right?
Correct. The septic permit brings to attention, because nobody comes to us and said, we're gonna build a house. I shouldn't say nobody, a lot of them do. It's like, I need an address or I need a septic system. It's like, what's your development? Well, I just need an address because we want it on our property. And by the time you finally get through the whole deal, they're building a new residence and it's a full regular deal. But then you go through the whole road impact fee discussion, and that's not always friendly.
I think there's a misconception in the community that just because we don't have county building codes and enforcement means that to the community that we don't have any standards or anything at all that has to be done, so people can do whatever they want. And I think that's a big misconception out there.
And they also think if they're on a red sign road, that the county doesn't take care of the roads, so they're not gonna pay a road impact fee.
It's the impact to all of the roads. I mean,
I
when
know.
you read it and understand it, I get it, but some people, I've had that conversation too.
Or they
so.
just say, well, I access my house from the highway, so I never use a county road, but we know that's not true either.
Right. Okay. Well then, how do you guys wanna try to progress with, I mean, that would, I guess what you're trying to say is that there needs to be a land use code change that's specific to administrative fees for development? Is that
Well,
what I'm
it's-
kinda
It's
understanding?
two-part. This all came about from the whole salary review deal.
Mhm.
So road impact fees was an option to try and offset the deficiency, and then it went to the septic systems. From this morning's meeting, now it would be as a higher additional revenue source.
Yeah, because I don't see you're gonna make it up on the deficiency of the septic system permits. And with what we're having to do, 90% of them are signed off by the engineer anyway. It doesn't make any logical sense.
So we're really looking at two different questions here.
Question is can we change the land use code? Is the question to have that administrative fee for,
Well, I think we could certainly put an administrative fee into the land use code. I think that trying to break down what the administration fee is gonna cover and when it's gonna kick in is a whole nother question. And I think that's something that, I mean, Don, you're gonna have the most expertise in terms of where your time's spent and what the best way to trigger that fee is. I mean, I don't, you know. That's gonna be the tricky part. What do you assign it to? I mean, when do you make somebody pay an administrative fee versus not?
So 100% of your time is, basically what you're saying is spent on development or researching it, whether it's new or,
Because every subdivision,
Oh.
we have to go check the files, the paper
and you
files.
have no way for development to pay for itself as far as fees for what your time is being spent, correct?
Correct. Because like subdivisions from the 70s, if it's still a vacant lot, they owe road impact fees.
Mhm.
Or there's subdivisions from 2010 that nobody collected from the developer the road impact fees. You can't go by a date. You can't take anything for granted. So it's, you look each and every one of them up.
That's where it gets really tricky to
Yeah.
put an
Yeah, there's not
administrative fee.
there's not a
It's,
standard fee that covers some
You
people
could,
that pay a lot too much and
could
some wouldn't pay much
potentially
at all.
do it hourly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why can't we just do it hourly? We know what the, I mean, we know what the cost is per hour and if
The
it's-
only thing that you might get into trouble with there is as salaries increase as the years go by, will that keep up with it?
We have a standard rate in the land use code at $75 an hour for research.
And I think that if you do an hourly fee, I mean, it's certainly an option, but you open yourself up to a lot of questions as to
Right.
what's this hour being spent for, who's spending it? You know, are you gonna charge $75 for your planning director's time and $25 an hour for the administrative assistant, or $50 an hour for the administrative assistant? I mean, you start to get into a lot of gray area, and then you have people coming in and saying, you know, how come I'm getting charged this many hours while this person's getting charged this many hours? I mean, certainly, you know, if it could be done, a flat fee would be a lot simpler and a lot easier and a lot more clear, and then folks would know exactly what they're expecting when they come in the door. I mean, if
But
people,
that argument's gonna be had too, so somebody comes in with a 20-lot development and a 2-lot development, I mean, there's gotta be some graduation there, just like we talked about small, medium, and large animals. I mean, what's the definition there? So,
Per lot.
well, that's the way it reads now, per lot.
Yeah.
Per road impact fee, right? And then per mile away from
Correct, yeah, the
designated
the
highway.
mileage. And we only charge mileage on county roads.
Right.
If they're 3 miles on a red sign road, we don't add that in until it hits a green county
or
road.
green.
I mean, I'm wondering if the next step isn't to sit down, you know, Don, and come up with some kind of a fee schedule that we can present or that we can look at, you know, and then we can tweak it. Because I mean, sitting up here, I think it's difficult to really ascertain, like, what are we charging for? How are we gonna get tipped off to it? And I think that was
Right.
one of the advantages of the septic permit, is it's pretty flat, and the septic permits come in and.
Correct.
And, but I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. That was just a pretty standard.
So, I think before we, ask myself and Don and Ian to sit down and take a look at this and put it together, we need a feel from the commissioners if this is something you're, willing to work towards, on amending those salaries and getting things caught up, or if we should, stop the process here. I think we just need some clear direction on that.
I think we need to keep going.
Well, you're talking about amending salaries, or you're talking
Well,
about
doing the
just-
work that would pay to amend the salaries.
So it's two different questions.
It is two different
The
questions.
original
because one
question
is-
came up was the amount of my salary and the adjustments.
Correct,
And I don't
which
know
is
if you,
question one.
And so it led to these other discussions on a different way
On how do you pay for
to
it?
pay for it, or you guys can just decide to review it. I mean, if you're, you know, I'll let you know before that, at a quick glance, and I showed Shaq, there's other departments that got overpaid on the salary increases. And
Well-
not by just a little. So if you're looking at a whole budget review for next year, then I'd say they all need to be reviewed. The ones I found, I understand the premise and how everything was set up originally, but I think it got a whole convoluted stream thrown in there. Because there's places where if you've been here for 15 years, but you've been compensated the same as, same position other counties, there should never have been a factor of the number of years you were here, because you were compensated all along. Now, if you were deficient for 10 years, then that other factor could be thrown in, because it's almost like compensating you a little bit where it was deficient for so long. But yeah, I mean,
Which is a totally different discussion.
But ultimately, the goal of this exercise would be to catch these salaries up. So if we're gonna do the work of doing this and looking at the administrative fees, before we set ourselves to doing them, then,
We gotta figure out the way to pay for it.
correct.
That, I guess I think is what
The bottom
Commissioner
line.
Lindsay just said, is if you can't pay for it, I mean, what do we do?
Yeah.
So if the conversation ends up that it can be paid for and we bring you back something as a way to
So,
pay for it.
you know, one of the hiccups that I had with this, and I told you right in the beginning, is that La Plata County, just like their fee right here, is over double, other than deltas, than everybody else. And that was the biggest factor that through our salary survey skewed.
Yeah,
Now, I understand, we compete with La Plata County because they are our next door neighbor.
yeah, we do lose employees to La Plata
However,
County.
it's very hard with the tax base that they have at double the population
And a sales tax.
and a sales tax compared to what we have. It's not really fair to us to skew that the way it was skewed. That's just my opinion. I mean, La Plata County is at, what, 57,000 population, almost right at double
Almost
us?
double, yeah.
then
And
that
they're-
would be taken out of every review.
Exactly.
And it wasn't.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Moving
You
forward,
can't pick and choose which
I'm
ones
not-
you want to and which ones you don't.
I'm not picking and choosing, you know, I'm just saying that that was one of the hiccups that I saw. But they are, it's relevant, it's real, they're stealing
Our employees.
our employees,
And we were
so,
directed to include it because it's a neighboring county.
yeah,
I mean, by the same token, Dolores County pulls us down, so.
correct, so, I don't know.
I mean, I'm just going with what we were told. And I think it ought to be universal across the board, every department. And it wasn't, so that's the issue I have, you know, facts are facts.
So what, I guess, what are you relating to then, Don?
Well, he's talking about everybody getting 4 years of service, including people that, you know, were already making what they should have been according to the wage study. But then also, not everybody ended up taking away what the wage study said they should. So
Yeah,
there's
There were
both
a lot of
sides to
people
it.
that didn't get what the wage study said that they should be making, you obviously being one of them. Pull these out if I have these right. Okay. Well, it's really, a gentleman, I think he's asking a question of which way do you want to move with it, one way or another is what your question is.
Well, I'm asking before
Well,
we
the
put in the
yeah.
work to move this forward, we wanna know if it's gonna be moved forward once we put in the work.
If you're changing the
I
land
think
use
that- I
code,
think
we're
that
looking
we're
at
gonna I
4 or
think
5
that-
months,
That, yeah, it'll take 4 or 5 months.
which
Um,
might be prudent for our discussion this morning, but not real prudent for today.
It's got to pay for itself, just like what we said in our department head meeting this morning. If it
Right.
doesn't pay for itself, we've got to stop the bleeding. And that's,
I understand that.
so,
So if our revenue covers it, then, I mean, that's all I ever hear is, well, it all comes out of the general fund, so if you don't ever go into a deficit, it doesn't matter where it comes from, which I don't buy off on. I'm just saying with the whole program that was set up last fall, it still isn't right.
so give me more information on what was,
I
what
can
did we
give you
not?
specifics, I don't know that we want to do it
Yeah, no,
here.
I don't think you want to do
But I
that.
mean, you want to see facts and figures, we can. I don't know what Shaq showed you last fall, December.
Everybody saw the same thing.
Yeah,
So I don't know, I mean,
except for Commissioner Koppenhafer,
you,
he didn't get to see that at all, so we'll leave you out of this discussion.
and I wasn't looking for it, it just happened to be where I needed to try and find my budget, because my budget has to be amended anyway, because it had other problems.
Trying to find the
So I
right,
guess I'd just soon we get this dealt with sooner than later and get the budget amended. We can still pursue the other.
well, the budget is set for this year. Is that what you're asking for, is a budget amendment for this year?
Yeah,
Because the budget's
my
already
budget's
set.
still wrong. Part of it's
He
missing.
does have a copier piece that needs to be amended.
Okay, well, I mean, we can amend the budget at the end of the year, or whenever we need to amend it.
I've got a line item that's missing, that's not being charged because we haven't amended it. And we're in the middle of April.
Well, why don't you get those to Shaq? That's just a department
He's
head
got
meeting
them.
that,
He's got them to me. I was just gonna do all the amendments at once.
okay?
But we have to come to some agreement before we can amend the budget. And so we can't present that until we get to some middle ground.
I cannot find it.
And we really can blame COVID on this one.
Yeah, 'cause you were out for
Between
COVID.
me and
when we
Shaq.
were- You were out for COVID when we were having these discussions. That is correct. Only I lost a lot more weight with it than you did.
I didn't lose my taste.
Did you have any to begin with?
No.
So I guess, Don, for me, I'm gonna have to go back and find all my red line notes that I can't find right now in my book.
Okay.
Shaq, that has that salary survey and everything else that went along with it, but the other amendments that you already have, if there's something that we missed because of that, a copier or something, obviously that's, if you're paying for it and it's not part of your budget, that needs to be corrected. But that's a simple, easy thing. I think what you're more specific to is the salary and how do we pay for the salary?
Correct.
That's
And
the
we,
bigger thing.
we also will have two years of our software program in this year's billing to pay for, because it didn't get entered in 2021.
Okay, so that's something else that'll be there, that'll have to come out of that. So out of that amendment. Okay. So, is the question answered for you, what you need?
Well,
I
so
don't
the
think so.
question is,
The
you know,
question
if
is-
we
is-
come up with the work for how it's gonna be paid for, are you guys gonna be willing to move it forward at that point?
So that's a change to the land use code.
It would be at this point.
That's really is a question back to you, Don, because that requires a lot of your work. I mean,
I would say the salary issue should be addressed right away, because we're already in the,
well, we
Middle
have
eight.
to have a way to pay for it.
well, okay,
And I
then,
understand what you're saying is
then let's go
everything comes
back
out
and
of the
fix the
general
ones that are
fund.
overpaid and fix the underpaid
Well, that's a
and do it like
discussion
it should
then-
have been done right.
That you can get that information to Shaq and then we'll review it. If you have discrepancies that you were,
Well, I haven't looked through 27 different departments, but I don't want to, and I don't think I need to.
okay,
I just found a big discrepancy, and I'm addressing it.
right.
But I did last November too, so. And in February.
Well, until I find my numbers, I'm not gonna make a decision
Fair enough.
on anything.
I can get
because
you
I
new
don't.
numbers, but I mean, I obviously don't have access to all the exact figures.
So I guess,
But when you can glance at something without even thinking about it, then it's pretty
right.
apparent.
And I can tell you that there were some numbers that were significant increases, 30–40%. And I can tell you the conversation without Commissioner Koppenhafer here, but Commissioner Stevenson here was, we didn't feel that we could increase that much to individuals, and a lot of those that showed that were not increased, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
And they were reduced significantly. Just because the survey said this, we still looked at, we're paying more this year out of the general fund than what
Right.
we're bringing in, and that was what we were looking at as a whole.
Right.
So,
But you can't fill the high spots in the road before you fill some of the lower spots,
Which
before
we-
you come in to fix it.
which again, without those numbers in front of me, I can't even dispute that with you, because we felt that we did fill all the lower spots first.
Up to a point.
Shaq has
Well,
all the,
to a
I don't have
point,
all
we
the
don't-
figures.
And I don't in front of me either, to a point. Did everybody get cured? No.
I'm just saying that.
I'll be the first one to tell you, not everybody got cured.
There's some balancing that
But we
should have occurred.
made some big adjustments into everybody's salaries. Kent, you were here too, so.
Yeah, we made some big adjustments.
Where's my sheet at?
I may still have the red line ones,
That's what I
those
need.
papers. I still have,
Okay,
they're at my house.
okay. All right.
I think that's what I went through. I went through your notes on that deal. I still have my thing.
Okay. That's what I can't find. I'm like,
Yeah.
gosh, where
I
are all
got
those
it
red
at the
line
house.
notes that we had, so.
That's all I can find is just the regular budget.
Yeah, and that's not the survey compared to the discussions that we had as far as the workshop with where they ended up in their salaries. So you're gonna have to give us a little bit of
Oh,
time
that's
till
fair
we
enough.
find those actual notes,
We just don't wanna kick it down
so
the
that we
road.
can, because I can tell you right now, the budget was set at those numbers, based on those numbers of, and we knew that we were taking out more than what we had coming in. And some of them were less than that 30 to 40%, for
Which
sure.
that I can appreciate. It's the ones that went up that shouldn't have, that also doesn't
And
sit
that,
well.
hopefully you've got to Shaq, and then we'll have a discussion.
Well,
with
I didn't look. I found two on one page when I wasn't even looking for it, so.
Okay. Well, then.
If you
we'll
want me
get
to
with Shaq.
review the whole thing and,
I'm not asking you to do that, but if you
well, I
have
mean,
a
I think it should be
specific-
done though.
I do. That's our administrator, he'll do that, that's his job. Well, it truly is, that's what he's saying.
No, I know, he just doesn't look very happy about it.
Well, I'll do it with you. I mean, it's not that we won't do it together, but it's still a matter of, we'll see what the discrepancies are, because I can tell you, we sat down and had a lot of conversations, and we looked at the percentages for every one of them, and looked at the lows and the highs, and so I'm not gonna say we didn't miss something, because obviously we're human and the error is human, but so we'll leave it at that for now, until we have the numbers, and we can start
Yep.
whenever your schedule allows. Okay,
Fair enough?
Commissioner?
He wasn't part of it.
Well, he's part of it now.
Yeah.
That's the problem, it keeps getting kicked down the road.
Yeah, he's part of it now. So I'll get my red line notes out, and then I'll have a better conversation with you, Shaq.
We're still on YouTube.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Don?
Nope, should be short and sweet tomorrow.
Should
Good
be.
deal.
Okay, your part,
My part,
your part.
I'll remember you said that.
my part.
Okay.
All right, cool,
All right.
thanks.
Thanks. Gentlemen, anything else for the good of the county?
No.
All right. Then we are adjourned.